A man making $90,000 a year is broke. A man making $40,000 a year is quietly building a fortune. Same country, same economy, same access to banks and credit cards. One of them will die with almost nothing. The other will leave behind a number that shocks his own children. And the strange part? If you looked at their bank statements 10 years ago, you couldn't have told them apart. This is not a story about income. Income is the least interesting part of wealth. This is a story about what happens inside a person's head long before a single dollar shows up in their account, and why two brains, given the exact same paycheck, will produce two completely different lives. Let's start with the $90,000 man. Call him Ryan. Ryan grew up watching his parents argue about money at the kitchen table. Not extreme poverty, just constant tightness. Bills stacked on the counter. A calculator kept near the checkbook. The unspoken tension every time the mail arrived. Ryan didn't grow up poor, but he grew up anxious about money. And those are two very different things that get confused all the time. By the time Ryan landed his first real job, something odd happened. The moment money started flowing in, it also started flowing out. Almost as if his body couldn't tolerate having it sit still. New car, nicer apartment, dinners out because he'd earned it. None of these decisions felt reckless in the moment. Each one felt justified, even smart. That's the part almost nobody talks about. Financially self-destructive behavior rarely feels self-destructive while it's happening. It feels like relief. Now here's where it gets interesting, because Ryan isn't lazy, and he isn't stupid. He reads the same personal finance articles everyone else reads. He knows what compound interest is. He could explain the difference between a Roth IRA and a traditional one if you asked him at a dinner party. Knowledge was never his problem. So what was? To answer that, we need to go back, not to Ryan's bank account, but to something researchers call a money script. A money script is a belief about money that got planted in you, usually before age 7, usually without a single word being spoken about it directly. Children don't learn about money from lectures. They learn from watching a parent's face tighten when a bill arrives, from the tone in a voice during a grocery store checkout, from whether money was treated as safety or as a source of shame. Ryan's money script, buried somewhere below conscious thought, was simple. Money disappears eventually, so you might as well enjoy it while it's here. Nobody taught him this sentence. He absorbed it. And once a belief like that is installed, it doesn't ask permission before it starts steering decisions. It just runs quietly in the background, making each individual purchase feel reasonable, even while the pattern as a whole leads somewhere dangerous. Now let's go back to the other man. Call her. Actually, let's make her a woman this time, because this pattern has nothing to do with gender. Call her Maria. Maria makes less than half of what Ryan makes. She drives a car that's 11 years old. She has roommates in her 30s, which used to embarrass her and now doesn't. From the outside, her life looks smaller than Ryan's. From the inside, something completely different is happening. Maria also grew up around financial stress, but hers took a different shape. Her parents didn't hide the numbers. They showed her. Her mother would sit with her at the table, not to complain, but to explain. This is what rent costs. This is what's left over. This is why we're not going out this month. It wasn't a lecture. It was exposure. And exposure, more than any single piece of advice, is what shapes a person's relationship with money. Maria's money script became, money is a tool you direct, not a mood you react to. That single sentence, again, one she never consciously articulated until much later in life, changed the trajectory of every decision that followed. When Maria got her first raise, she didn't upgrade her lifestyle. She didn't even feel a strong pull to. The extra money simply moved, almost automatically, into a savings account she rarely looked at. This is the part that surprises people the most. For Maria, saving wasn't an act of willpower. It required no discipline at all. Just felt like the obvious next step, the same way brushing your teeth after breakfast feels obvious, rather than heroic. And this is where the psychology gets genuinely fascinating, because most people assume wealth is built through discipline, grinding, restraint, saying no to yourself over and over until the numbers finally add up. But that's not what the research on financially successful people actually shows. The people who build lasting wealth rarely describe their saving as a struggle. They describe it as automatic, almost boring. The fight only shows up in people whose internal money script is working against them, people who have to consciously override an urge that Maria never had to fight in the first place. So here's the open question worth sitting with. If willpower isn't really the deciding factor, what is? The answer lives in a concept psychologists call identity-based behavior. Ryan didn't overspend because he lacked self-control. Ryan overspent because somewhere underneath the surface, spending was who he believed himself to be, a person who deserved to enjoy money now, because money never stays anyway. Maria didn't save because she was more disciplined than Ryan. Maria saved because underneath the surface, saving was simply who she was, a person who directs money rather than reacts to it. Neither of them was making a moral choice each month. They were both just being themselves. This explains something that trips up almost every financial advisor. You can hand two people the identical budget spreadsheet, the identical advice, the identical plan, and one of them will follow it effortlessly, while the other abandons it within 6 weeks, filled with guilt, wondering what's wrong with them. Nothing is wrong with them. Their spreadsheet was fighting their identity, and identity wins that fight almost every single time. Now, here's the part of the story that matters most, because it would be easy to walk away from this thinking your money script is fixed, something installed in childhood that you're simply stuck with for life. That's not true, and there's real evidence for why. The brain doesn't distinguish nearly as sharply as we think between belief and evidence of belief. Every time a person makes a decision that contradicts their old money script, even a small one, it functions as a tiny piece of proof against the old story. Ryan, at some point, could open a savings account he never touches, not because his anxious money script suddenly vanished, but because that one action becomes evidence, filed away, that a different kind of person is possible. Do that enough times, in different ways, and the identity itself starts to shift. Not through force. Through repetition of small contradicting evidence, the same slow way the original belief got installed in the first place. This is also why sudden windfalls so often fail to change anyone's financial life. Lottery winners, athletes with huge signing bonuses, people who inherit money unexpectedly. Study after study shows a shocking number of them end up financially worse off within a few years. The money changed. The identity underneath it didn't. And when identity and income disagree with each other, identity always wins the argument, usually by draining the account back down to whatever level feels normal to that person. So if income isn't the real lever, and willpower isn't the real lever, what actually is? It's the quiet, repeated evidence a person gives themselves about who they are with money. Every automatic transfer, every bill paid before it's due, every moment someone chooses to wait 24 hours before a purchase. These aren't just financial actions. They're identity votes. And a person's financial future is decided less by the size of their paycheck than by which identity ends up winning the majority of those votes over time. Ryan and Maria never met. They never compared notes, never sat across from each other, at that same kitchen table. But the gap between where they'll end up has nothing to do with the 90,000 or the 40,000. It was decided years earlier, in silence, at two different tables, by two different sentences neither of them ever said out loud. The real question was never how much you make. It's who you've quietly decided you are every single time money passes through your hands.